And innovation is probably a bit of a generic term, but let me throw a few things into innovation. Things like AI, things like cloud, things like having all these sustainably driven, as well. So one of the conundrums we see at the moment is this huge drive on AI. Although there's it's on a little bit of shaky ground at the moment where people are questioning, are we building too much too soon? Everybody's still building for AI. And on top of that, they also want to be green. They want to be sustainable. They want to be responsible for this as well. Now, the huge power and water demands out of AI are counterintuitive to how you can actually be sustainable. So actually balancing both of those together, at the moment is an imperative for a lot of these, organizations at the moment. Hi there, it's Rich Farrell from Eaton, and you're watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
Hi, it's Joshua Feinberg, host of the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast. And I'm so thrilled to have a very special guest joining me today. I'm welcoming Rich Farrell, who is the Asia Pacific Regional Director of Digital Transformation and the Data Center business for Eaton in Singapore. Rich, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Joshua. Thanks so much for inviting me. Great to be here, and well done on getting that laborious job title correct. You did a great job.
It's my pleasure, and I'm thrilled to have you joining me here as well. So,
thank you.
Rich, how did you end up in this place in your career where you're leading digitalization, leading data center initiatives for a world-class company like Eaton in Singapore?
Yeah, Joshua, it's one of those questions I ask myself, on a regular basis. I consider myself to have a very fortunate life, very, very, very charmed life. I was never meant to be here. Is the short answer. Growing up where I did in a pretty much small country town in Australia, about 2-3 hours outside of Sydney. People ask where I grew up, and I say, well, there was beaches on one side and dairy farms on the other. It was a very small sort of town, small area, but great place to grow up in. Long story short, I basically made a couple of decisions to start traveling and to start working, in Sydney. I sort of fell into the IT industry back in the late 90s. And if anybody was around, at that time, showing my age a little bit, but in the late 90s, that was boom time for the IT industry. The internet had only been around a few years, and everybody needed connectivity to the internet. So I actually started working as a Microsoft engineer, as a Cisco engineer, as well. And eventually that transitioned from engineering roles into pre-sales engineering roles, eventually into sales. From there, I started off with APC back in about 2007, and basically running the channel business there in Australia. And that led me naturally, into the power and energy side of the business and the technology side. And then it led up into data centers. Data centers were really starting to boom. I mean, this was back in probably the around about 2008 to 2010 sort of time frame, back when we used to call them data centers, not data centers, but server rooms. And a lot was on site, on premise. The advent of colocation and cloud was really just coming out. So, Joshua, a lot of it's been in the right place at the right time. I always advocate to, whenever you give an opportunity, you say yes, even if you're not quite sure whether you can do it, you say yes, and then you work it out. So being in the right place at the right time and saying yes has led me to be here in Singapore. I've been with Eaton for almost 10 years. 5 of those years have been in Singapore in this current role, looking after the data center and digitalization business across Asia Pacific.
So way back when you were playing in between the beaches and the dairy farms, was it a goal or a thought of yours, technology?
Never.
Were you thinking about being able to have this glamorous career where you're living in all these different regions around the world?
Never, Joshua. I think this is one of the great things about our industry, and indeed when you do move into sales. And I go back to saying yes when the opportunity presents itself. A lot of the time people are a bit nervous about taking chances, but that's probably been the thing that's allowed me to live in some of these, exotic locations and move around the world. No, very much when we were kids, country towns, you pretty much left, you either studied or got an apprenticeship somewhere. it's one of those areas which it's a great place to grow up and a great place to live. And whenever I go back there now, as I do regularly, I'm like, wow, this is God's country. It's amazing. But at the same time, when you grow up in one place, you can't wait to get out of there, as well. So I think as good as it was, I wanted to get out, but I had no idea I'd ever end up here in this sort of role, doing this sort of job. Like I said, I really do feel blessed in terms of, how this is all actually ended up and how it's continuing to end up as well.
So when you head back to your hometown the next time, if you were to bump into a neighbor or a family member and they were asking for some advice on behalf of a teenage son or daughter about careers, and they've heard about data centers, they're certainly a lot more in mainstream business and financial news and just news in general than they have in the last couple of years. They know a little bit about what you do. What kind of advice would you give to your teenage, early 20-something self, or a cousin, nephew, niece, daughter in that kind of situation?
Well, actually, it's very topical. I have three children. I have a 20-year-old son, and I have two 18-year-olds, son and daughter. And I've literally just been giving this advice to my 18-year-old son. He's just left school. He's not sure what he wants to do. At the moment, doesn't know whether he wants to, study or work or whatever it may be. And I said, look, you have to do something. And really, the three options when you leave school are you either study, or you work, or you travel. Okay, any three of those things are going to, be advantageous for you, but you have to do something. So the first thing is you can't not do anything. You have to be able to do something. I'd say the second thing is you're not meant to know what you want to do for the rest of your life when you're 18 years old. I joke to my son and say, hey, I'm almost 50 years old and I'm still not quite sure what I want to do, but hey, mate, it's working out pretty well so far. So when you're 18, you're not meant to know what you want to do. Maybe you are meant to go and study a little bit or work a little bit of travel, but eventually you'll find something that makes you content or gives you purpose. So I think being, having that prescriptive sort of childhood where I know what I want to do when I'm 10 years old. And there are people like that, and that's great. I'm a little bit jealous of them as well, that they know what they want to do. And I think for most people, they don't really know. They have to get out there and experience it. They have to get out into the world. So one of the things I would advocate is if you're not sure what you want to do, go and find out. Go to travel to different destinations, relocate, try different jobs, travel. Travel is severely underestimated, when it actually comes to finding your purpose and what you really love as well. Eventually, these things will evolve and you'll find your place in the world and what you actually need to do. Now, I never planned to be here. I never planned to be where I am, but I can't imagine being anywhere else. So, like I said, I'm very blessed. I love my job. I love all the opportunities that I've been given as well. But you have to make it happen. It's not going to come to you. You have to go to it. And if you don't know what it is, then go out there and try to find it. Go out there, like I said, travel, try different things when you're out there. And eventually your purpose will come to you rather than you coming to your purpose.
That's super interesting. And it's especially challenging having those kinds of conversations if formal education, if in the US K-12 is very focused on the prestige of where you're going to go to college and the prestige of your career. And many times from a relatively young age, at least in the part of the US that we live in, starting at around age 9 or 10, they're starting to dangle. It's beyond just career day. It's career academies where one of your electives that you take in your class could be healthcare or IT or engineering or culinary. And I guess it's good to explore that. The challenge is kids really start to make a decision about what they want to do for their career when they're 8, 9, 10 years old.
Yeah, exactly that. I agree with you. I think it's great that they get to explore that sort of stuff. It's fantastic rather than just doing, probably the things that you and I did where we'd have to, the only options we have are different forms of mathematics or different forms of English, though I loved English class and history and everything like that, probably why I traveled so much as well. But I think the problem there, Joshua, is say a kid does go and do culinary classes, then they start to get typecast as, oh, this person wants to be a chef, or they want to work in hospitality, and that stays with them for the next 5 or 10 years. They may want to be an artist. They may want to go into banking, as well. And I think that's where the flexibility needs to come from there. if I look at different parts of the world, there's different challenges when it comes to the education you're talking about. And, for example, in the US, going to an Ivy League, college. Here in Asia, it is a huge amount of pressure on children, growing up here. They do tutoring before school, they do tutoring after school, they do tutoring on weekends. There's a huge amount of pressure put on them from the education side. And I get it. And I'm also speaking out of school here a little bit because my children never attended schooling in Singapore or in Asia as well. But if I look at the amount of pressure that's put on these children to get these academic results, and you and I both know, and probably a lot of your listeners know, that the academic stuff is important, but it's not the only important thing. It's what you bring to an organization as a person, as an individual, as a team player, and your experience as well. And I think this is what's underdone. That mixture of having those formal educational qualifications, along with that mixture of life experience, ends up making you invaluable to organizations. I didn't go to university till much later in life. I tried when I first left school, and it wasn't for me at that time, and it ended up being the best thing I did. I traveled. I did end up having children, at an early age, and I worked and worked my way up in different organizations, and that allowed me different experiences. I did eventually go back and get qualifications, but I didn't do it immediately. So again, I think it really just comes down to, where you're at in life, what your purpose is, what you want to do. But saying there's, one size fits all, everybody must go to school, everybody must go and get a tertiary education, and then you work. I don't think that's necessarily right or true. I think everybody has to find their own way.
Yeah, in the US at least, that non-traditional path is becoming a lot more common. Companies as big as Fortune 500 companies are now saying that they would rather actually get very moldable 18-year-olds and train them, as opposed to them taking a degree that may not have any relevance for their career. And then 4 years later, they arrive to this job. They may have debt. Their family may have significant debt sending them to college, and they arrive at 22, 23 years old expecting to jump into this prestigious career when they may not have significant marketable skills. So there's a lot of debate going on. Some of the technology companies like Google, career certificates, there's a whole bunch of initiatives that AWS has done this, NVIDIA has done this. They have fantastic informal training and certification programs that you can knock out in 10, 20, 30 hours that start to move the needle on a little bit of credentialing. I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I mean, if that adds value to the organization, I won't say more than a degree, because I'm definitely not, downplaying a degree. I think it's going to become, I think, for this next generation, my children's generation and yours, almost an essential thing they need. But it's great that it's not the be all and end all, that these organizations are looking at different options.
Yeah. So, Rich, that's really great insights to be thinking about for someone that's at the very formative early stages, figuring out what their first job should be, although maybe they should be thinking about what the second and third is as well at the same time, if they don't get too far ahead of themselves. But what about someone that's more mid-career? Maybe it's someone that you worked with 10 or 15 years ago, you used to be pretty close, you haven't seen them in a while, you bump into them at a conference or in the airport or something, and you sense that they're not quite themselves. They seem a little bit off, they seem a little bit stressed and burned out. What would you chat about over coffee or lunch to help give them some guidance to get back on track, pivot, rebooting their career mojo, especially in some less technical careers that you work with them in, like client-facing jobs?
Probably, I sort of sense, Joshua, you asking this question, you've had this conversation plenty of times, with people, I should imagine, as well. And people tend to come to you when they see you having a certain degree of success. As well. Like, we did work 10 or 15 years ago, and I'm happy I'm doing this thing here, but, Rich, you've gone here, or Joshua, you've gone here. How did that happen? So I think a lot of people, they sort of want to hear your story about how it happened so they can pick ideas as well. And when this sort of does happen, and I guess, for openness and transparency, Joshua, we've all been there. I've been there as well. I call my midlife crisis me opening my own business. I opened up my own business outside of the industry about 11 years ago. Had a bit of a break from the IT world. like I said, I called it my entrepreneurial flair in my own business. Couple of friends at the time called it my midlife crisis, which is probably a bit of both to be true. But even speaking from personal experience, I needed a break. I needed to actually cut the cord, for a little while and give myself a bit of breathing time. But at the same time, we all have responsibilities, right? We've got mortgages, we have kids as well. So I actually went and started up my own company, and it was both the best thing and worst thing that I ever did, as well. And eventually I stepped back into the technology industry, and 10 years later, here I am. So when I talk to people about this, really you get down is like, go back to purpose. And I try to stay away from happy. I don't ask people whether happiness is fleeting, but purpose. So do you feel like you're doing what you're meant to be doing? It's usually a question that will come up. And I do mentoring and coaching, so this is a literal conversation I will have, particularly on the coaching side. Do you feel like you're doing what you're meant to be doing? What are you meant to be doing? And how did you end up here? And you end up regressing, having that conversation like we just did now about, how did I actually get here? And what did my childhood look like to lead this here? Did I imagine myself doing this as well? It's sort of like stripping back the layers. Once you strip back the layers, and you can actually try to give some meaningful advice. But I think how you give advice is really important as well, Joshua. I think if you're going to sit there preaching and go, well, look at me flying around the place and how important I am, that adds no value to the person. It only pumps your ego up. It does nothing for them. A lot of the time around the coaching part is asking questions to help them identify, what their purpose is, what they feel like they should be doing, why they are a little bit flat, or where they are as well. When we do these sessions, we do talk to people about, okay, in an ideal world, what would your life look like when you wake up in the morning? Would you be having your coffee brought to you in the morning by your butler? Would you be hopping on the private jet and going into work and making powerful business decisions? Or are you going to be sitting on the beach right now with your family and watching your kids swim? So just taking it back a little bit to try to find out what purpose is, then making it realistic. As much as we'd probably all like to be on a beach somewhere or flying in our private jet, for a lot of us that is not going to be a reality. So what can you do right now to actually get your mojo back? What's something that you can actually really give yourself, purpose for, as well? And it's usually in the little things, Joshua. I don't know when you've talked to people about this, but it's usually in the little things. It's not the big things. And the little things aren't that little, but they're things like taking care of your health, getting decent sleep, a bit of exercise, reconnecting with people, as well, finding parts of your job or in your industry that you can get passionate about, as well. So there's various different ways you can do it, but it's very rare that a person can make a dramatic change in their life. So it's about finding those little changes they can make to get them back on track. Joshua, can I ask a favor? Can I do a shameless book plug, which I have right next to me now? And for anybody who's listening, we're not live, so Joshua can edit this out anytime he wants. But I do talk about this in my book a little bit, which I published 3 years ago, as well as Sell This, Sell That, which is also talks about getting your mojo back as a salesperson. And I talk about just those things, there. Look at the little things you can do to actually get back on track.
Yeah, connecting it to purpose. Connecting it to the reason and goals.
Yeah. I prefer purpose and happiness, Joshua. I mean, my 18-year-old son, he was saying he wants to find something that makes him, happy. And then I said, well, happiness is fleeting. It's sort of, it comes and it goes. He goes, well, I want to feel content. And I said, well, contentness is based on peace and that. And he goes, and he's getting frustrated. Okay, well, what word is it? I said, well, you have to find something that means something. I knew the word was purpose. I wanted to hear him say it. He goes, I want to find purpose. I was like, yes, okay, he's got it. So, if an 18-year-old kid who has just left school, got the weight of the world on his shoulders, can go, I need to find purpose. I know people that have a lot more life experience and in mid-career can also find purpose as well.
I think that's really sound advice for people even in sales careers, especially in data centers and digital infrastructure, where there's this general sentiment now with so many buyers doing so much self-directed research in the self-driven buyer's journey that they're, in many cases, pivoting and repositioning themselves to be seen more like consultants and subject matter experts and helping their prospects find the purpose for why they reached out to them in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, that career pivot's a big one now, right? If you look at everything that's happening now, particularly in the technology space, you have to remain current. You have to remain relevant. If you are relying on how you sold 10 years ago, you are not relevant. Okay, there's just the whole industry has moved on. You do need to move on with it.
Yeah. Not a big demand for people that can design and sell client server solutions.
I haven't heard that term in a long time, but you're right.
Yeah, it was a big deal though back in the.
Oh yeah, it was. I remember going on sales courses and training courses, and they would they're literally using that terminology, around there. So you've got client server devices, and we're running this sort of protocol, and you have to go in to be the trusted advisor, which is a way overused term, by the way, as well. So yeah, that's a great example of the training that was probably given 10, 15 years ago. It's sort of moved on from there now.
I think the trust is still a central part of this.
Absolutely.
I think that's a huge part of why the conference ecosystem is so popular, because I think people feel like if they can just get FaceTime, that it accelerates trust. But I talk with people all the time about using education as trust, hosting more events, hosting more of their own events, especially where they're seen in that professional development, learning and development kind of context, as opposed to just having fun and socializing.
There is, and there are some things that will never go out of fashion in terms of sales and how you sell, and trust is one of the top three, that you actually have in there as well. It's paramount for a relationship, right? If a person is going to be signing off and spending tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions or more of dollars with you, then trust is a huge element. I think just the term that I used to run into all the time, trusted advisor, was way overused. You'd see it in marketing blurbs, in presentations, in annual reports, as well, because everybody was using it. It sort of devalued the term trusted advisor. But yeah, trust is paramount.
The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com.
Rich, with that in mind, with the kinds of businesses that you meet with each week across your region, across the different segments that you and your team sell into, what do you see as the biggest challenge that many are confronting right now? Mm-hmm. And what do you think the solution may look like to that?
Okay, in terms of what the customers' challenges are?
Yeah.
Look, definitely at the moment, there's probably three things, that I can, there's 1,000 things, but I'll boil it down, to three things, and especially with our data center customers here. So our biggest customers are the big American cloud players, the China-based cloud players, and then all the co-location companies, sit in between all of them as well. Definitely speed to market at the moment is an issue. Everybody wants something yesterday. And if they can find a way to shortcut 2 weeks, 4 weeks, off a job, they'll do it, and they'll do everything they can to do it, as well. If speed to market, the reason why that's important is if you're first to market, you will get the business. There is just that much business out there at the moment. Why do a lot of the co-location companies build for the big cloud companies we just mentioned? Because the cloud companies cannot build quick enough. They can't build these physical sites, these physical data centers quickly enough. So they have to go to co-location data centers. So therefore, if you're the speed to market, if you're the first to build this, you will get that business. So that's driving innovation, which would probably be the second point. Lots of innovation, particularly around things like in our space, around modularized data centers, containerized data centers as well, skid-based data centers, or powertrains as well. So anything that can get the data center up and running, a lot quicker, will basically, it's a winning strategy and a winning formula right now for people that are doing that. The second thing I said is innovation, and innovation is probably a bit of a generic term, but let me throw a few things into innovation. Things like AI, things like cloud, things like having all these sustainably driven, as well. So one of the conundrums we see at the moment is this huge drive on AI. Although there's a little bit of shaky ground at the moment where people are questioning, are we building too much too soon? Everybody's still building for AI. And on top of that, they also want to be green. They want to be sustainable. They want to be responsible for this as well. Now, the huge power and water demands out of AI are counterintuitive to how you can actually be sustainable. So actually balancing both of those together, at the moment is an imperative for a lot of these, organizations at the moment. And probably the third thing, and we touched on this just before we started talking around the podcast, just how much has changed in the last few weeks since you and I first spoke as well. It's the cost of doing business now. Things like, the tariffs in place, the cost of manufacturing, where you manufacture, as well, plays into all of this. Things don't get cheaper, they always get more expensive. That includes labor, manpower, cost of materials, and everything as well. So working out where you actually manufacture and where you, as a customer, where you source that equipment from is very important. So again, there's a lot of things that we can talk about, but I'd say that innovation part around AI and sustainability, the speed to market, if you can get out there quicker than your competitors, you will get the business. And then just being globally aware in terms of manufacturing, in terms of supply chain as well. These are pretty common conversations we're having.
Speed, innovation, and globalization to the extent that it impacts cost structures.
It does. I mean, we do. I mean, we could be building a data center here in Thailand or in Malaysia, and if the customer has a positive experience somewhere in Virginia, you see it reflect. It comes down the chain saying, hey, you guys did a great job. We've got no problems using you. Conversely, if we do a bad job in another part of the world, somewhere in Europe, for example, that impacts us here as well. So these guys very much are globally aware, and they treat their suppliers globally. They don't treat us as just being the guys that sit in Singapore or the guys that sit in Seattle. They treat us all globally.
It's the same thing even on the B2C side that people have talked about for decades with global brands, whether it's direct to consumer, whether it's beverage, whether it's hospitality. Want a consistent experience when they're engaging with your equivalent, someone in your role in somewhere in the US or Canada or the UK or Latin America.
Yeah, and it wasn't always like that, Joshua. I mean, I've seen it evolve even in the 5 or so years that I've been here in Singapore, where our customers have become a lot more globalized themselves. I mean, we would see literally the lack of communication happening for, say, an APAC team with a North America team, where sometimes, weirdly, as a supplier, you'd always end up becoming the interpreter saying, well, your APAC team is telling us this and the North American team is telling us that. Can you guys please help us out? We find that's not so much the case now. These teams all talk to each other. They all converse with each other as well. So, a lot of the time I might be sitting here at, 8:30 a.m. on a Thursday morning, and I'll be talking to a customer where you are on the East Coast, where it is 8, 9 p.m., at night, trying to influence an opportunity in this part of the world. I do like your analogy, though, around, food and beverage, and other customers have been doing this for decades, where everything is globalized, and it's about having a globalized brand, as well, rather than just looking in isolation at the country or region that you're in.
Yeah, we're so tightly connected now. It actually feels like, and there's probably a lot of data from analyst firms like Gartner that validate that during the couple of years of lockdown in the early 2020s, the digital transformation and globalization both really jumped ahead.
Yeah, and that's a great point to get to. There was a lot of things out of our control that drove all of this, as well, particularly that time during COVID where in a lot of ways it was, in the data center space, it was fantastic to drive business because, everybody was staying at home. Your kids had to study at home. My kids had to study at home. We had to work from home. We all went crazy with online shopping. So we're getting bored out of our minds, having to sit at home. All of that generates data, and all of that data has to sit in the cloud, and all that cloud sits in data centers. So that was actually a huge boost for our industry and drove massive demand. It actually decimated supply chains because we weren't ready for it, and we were handling the whole COVID crisis and shipping and everything like that as well. But we find during times like that, some of these things are out of control. It's got to work one of two ways, right? It's actually got to really, be a boom for our industry, or it's going to slow it down. COVID was definitely something that helped our industry boom.
You mentioned a little earlier that there's 3 different segments you spend most of your time with: US hyperscalers, Chinese hyperscalers, and colocation operators. Do you get involved much in Eaton's efforts with channel partners?
I do, to a point. Though a lot of our data center business is usually direct, business there. So, if you think about when we're dealing, with one of the large American-based, organizations there, again, because they're global and because they want to source directly from suppliers, channel partners can't, no, I won't say can't, it's about 80-20 rule, basically, when we go through a partner or a contractor or someone like that. Where I do get more involved is more in our digital business. So particularly in APAC, our digital software business is heavily partner driven. Over here, we run a small, team around the region across India, China, all of Asia, and Australia here, and we heavily rely on our partner community to actually, get involved and help us there as well. So we provide training for them. We actually have a certification stream for them as well. We have things, just channel 101. We have deal registration as well. So not so much on the data center side, but definitely on the digital and software side, where we're heavily partner driven and rely heavily on the channel.
And it's interesting to see that's split in the 2 different lines of business. Curious too, if you could just take a moment or two and walk me through, so for our viewers' benefit, a little bit about how your team is organized, what kinds of job functions are especially important to your role, how they work together, how they fit in with other parts of Eaton.
Yeah, sure. And this is, you're going to be Josh, this is one of the cool things about my team that I really like about my job as well. So we have 3 different teams within the team. So we have our global data center team. So we've split out our accounts between regional and global. My team runs the global accounts within APAC. I have counterparts in Europe and in the Americas as well. We then run our digital team within the region. We usually have a pre-sales, sales, post-sales engineer and wider team in each of those regions. So again, in India, China, throughout Asia, and the Asia one we headquarter here in Singapore, and then Australia as well. And then we have a cybersecurity team as well. And you usually don't associate Eaton with cybersecurity. So we don't do cybersecurity products. We do cybersecurity services. And we don't do it in the IT space. We do it in the OT, the operational technology space. And for those who don't know what the operational technology is, it's really the equipment that are within a facility, everything from keeping the lights on to keeping the air conditioning going, power backup and everything as well. So we're not doing the IT space, we're doing the operational technology. And it's more a assessment and auditing service that we do. So that team is headquartered out of India over there, but we have engineers that travel around the region, actually coordinating and doing that. So there's 3 different teams, and within those teams, we do obviously have account managers, we have key account managers who run these large accounts, and we're talking, very large accounts, so very large account management that they have to do, in that space. We have our solution architects. Our solution architects are responsible for putting together a complete solution for a customer. So, hardware, software, everything together, so we can actually package it up and take it out to a consultant or out to the customer based on their needs as well. And then we try to replicate that in the cybersecurity and software businesses as well. It changes a little bit. I mean, we're obviously on the software side. It's really about configuration, licensing, how we actually put a solution together for the customer, and then the deployment and implementation of that as well. And as I mentioned, in the cybersecurity side, it's more around having sales engineers that can go out and identify the needs of a customer and what they need on an assessment and auditing service. And then those engineers themselves actually go out on site and will spend anywhere from 3 days to a month, depending on the scope of what the customer requires, doing a full cybersecurity audit of that customer's infrastructure. So there's no day is ever the same, Joshua. With having all these different roles within the team, there's all different conversations happening, different points of reference and different areas that you have to be in. Like I said, it's one of the things that I love about my job. There's just so much variation in the role.
That'd be interesting as well. There's so many different parts of the data center ecosystem, between the operators, 4 or 5 different kinds of operators, 24 or so different kinds of technology companies, facilities related companies, which is where I would tend to classify Eaton, somewhere in and around facilities, but probably leaning a little more towards the technology side.
Yep.
You know, the construction, real estate, investors.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, if I look at my team, it's they're probably more involved in the day to day, right? So my data center guys are talking to the facilities managers, the procurement teams, supply chain, our factories, you know, and everything they're organizing proactive training and education around products, and obviously follow up with customers as well. The engineers are obviously doing design on the pre-sale side, or doing implementation, commissioning, troubleshooting on the post-sales side as well. You know, we all have strengths and weaknesses. My strength is definitely more around that software and data center side. You know, the cybersecurity side I have a history of, but way back when I'm heavily reliant on the team, you know, to do that there. A lot of the conversations I have, I will be involved in the actual, you know, particularly deal closure, getting across tender interviews and everything like that. But a lot of my role now, really, Joshua, is almost evangelism, if that makes sense. I'm sort of out there doing podcasts and talks and sitting on the stage and going and meeting some of the execs out there to really promote what Eaton as a brand and what our capabilities are, and, you know, what we've done in the past and what we're doing in the future, you know, as well. One thing about this role, you can't get too bogged down in any one thing. You've really got to be up there and spend a lot of time looking after your team, supporting them, making sure they've got all the tools they need, clearing a path for them. If you get too bogged down as a manager, you just take your eye off these other things and bad things happen. You need to be able to have that, you know, you need to be able to have trust in your team. You need to be able to rely on them, you know, as well, give them the autonomy they need. And that allows you to actually have that higher level view. And you can sort of, you know, plug yourself in where you see you're needed.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how that fits in and to learn more about what you do on a day-to-day basis. I'm curious to get your thoughts on what you think may change about a role like yours over the next 2 to 4 years when you look into your crystal ball. What does it look like to lead a data center, digital transformation, cybersecurity kind of business in the sector?
Yeah, it's probably timely, as we mentioned. I mean, I'm with Eaton a long time, and I plan on being with Eaton a long time, and about to change roles, you know, and change locations still within Eaton. And it's part of the easiest way to answer that question in what I do and how I deal with customers is looking at mature markets versus emerging markets. How we treat a mature market is going to be a lot different to how we engage and treat an emerging market. And by an emerging market, you know, it could be, an example would be in APAC, would be probably let's say Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines are emerging markets in APAC. Mature markets would be China, Japan, Singapore, Australia, probably Malaysia now as well. You know, throw them in there as well. These markets, how you engage with them is different, because the mature markets are mature for a reason, right? They've got a huge install base in there. They've got a lot of subject matter experts as well. The business keeps churning over, you know, in these locales. You're not scrapping and fighting to be the first into the market or get the first data center. There's dozens of data centers, if not more, hundreds of data centers in some of these cities and countries. So how you engage with them is a lot different. They're mature. They want to make sure that they are looked after. They want to make sure that the pricing, you know, is competitive and correct. They will make sure supply chain, nothing goes over time, and the project is delivered successfully. If you go into an emerging market, it's a lot different. You may be assisting the first entrant into that country or into that city. They may still be looking for land. They still might be trying to acquire power. So what can you do to help them? Okay, what are the conversations you can have? And really a lot of that is you're trying to be the easiest supplier to work with. And this is one of my mantras with my team. When all else fails, be the easiest person to work with, be the easiest company to work with, be the easiest supplier to work with. Because these guys are going into these markets, they've got 100 different things they have to worry about. You try to be the thing they don't have to worry about. Give them peace of mind that you've got to do what you say you're going to do, and you can deliver what you say you're going to deliver. But eventually emerging markets do become mature. So again, that's where you sort of take that, you know, 30,000 foot view, you sort of step back and just make sure you're doing the basics, you know, well, the engagement, the evangelism, making sure that you're delivering projects, you know, on time, on budget, as well. So in terms of my role changing, I guess how I see it changing is really around that. When you go into a new market, you're very much hands-on. When it's a mature market, you can sort of sit back, especially if you have a great team. And I'm very fortunate where I have a fantastic team here, very mature team, and they're a self-sustaining team as well. That enables me to go in and then get more hands-on, I should say, on other parts of the business. So I would say my role always seems to come back full circle. Starts in one area, we have to work through, then it comes back around again. My role won't really change too much, I shouldn't imagine. I mean, we're always at the whims of what's happening, in the world, economically, geopolitically, let alone what's happening in our industry and what some of the industry drivers are, as well, things like AI and sustainability. But overall, my role in particular, it really depends on where I am at a point in time dealing with a customer or dealing with an organization.
So it almost sounds like with the mature markets versus the emerging markets, there's almost an element of that startup kind of scrappy feeling that you may have experienced when you were building your own business. Whereas in a mature market, when you walk into a room with IT or facilities executives in the space, you figure at least 80-90% of the people know who Eaton is.
Joshua,
at least have some brand recognition.
Yeah, Joshua, I'll tell you something, right? And this may come across as a little bit arrogant, but if I walk in a room full of execs, which happens at a regular enough basis in or senior leadership as well, I can tell who's run their own business and who hasn't. I can tell who's worked for a small business and who hasn't. I can tell who's been an entrepreneur just by the way they react to things and their expectations and how they frame questions, as well. And it's usually the people that have always worked in big organizations. They're invaluable to that organization. Okay, if you've worked in big companies and S&P 500 companies for your whole life, you've got a set of skills that is transferable to these big companies. But then you've got these other set of people that have worked for themselves or for a small company and a startup, and they realize that it is the blood, sweat, and tears and not giving up and just surviving that gets you there as well. So it depends on really who you're engaging with and what you're engaging about, as well. I mean, I'm probably 50-50 in terms of when I meet customers, it's relationship building. I'll go and catch up, see how everything's going. Are we delivering on what we promised? And then we have another 50% will be going out there saying, hey, we're Eaton, what do you know about us? Let me tell you. So it's really gauging also your audience and what their background is. But over the years, I pride myself on being able to identify people who come from different backgrounds and what experience they have just by the way they frame questions and how they react to your questions as well.
Yeah, we're seeing an increasing trend, especially among the operators, where they're starting to segment out sales teams by vertical, on the theory that if you're selling into healthcare or manufacturing or financial services, having dedicated account executives, dedicated teams that are really embedded in that helps with positioning, helps with differentiation. Are you seeing any of that in your space at this time?
Oh, we do it ourselves. I mean, my last two roles that I've had when I entered the Australian team with Eaton, one of the first things I did is put a segment strategy in. It was just a bit of a mess where salespeople climbing over each other to get deals. They didn't have any verticals or segments they were working on, no go-to-market strategy. So it was essential just to get team cohesion and to weed out, the guys who were really switched on versus those that were just being opportunistic, as well. So I think segmentation is vital. You also get to have that subject matter expertise as well. It doesn't happen straight away. If you're engaging or leading a team, a sales team that doesn't have segmentation, expect to go through 2 or 3 years worth of pain, minimum, until you get it right. Okay, it doesn't happen overnight. And you're not an expert on every segment. I'm not an expert on manufacturing and healthcare and and data centers and everything else. I have certain areas. For you to actually find the right people to lead those areas takes time. To give people an opportunity to show that they want to engage and become subject matter experts as well takes time. And then getting to go to market right, finding that right set or subset of customers takes time, as well. And that's where customer profiling is really important. If you're going to implement a segment strategy, do customer profiling as well to see where they actually sit. and finding the right account managers and the right engineering teams to actually lead that for you as well. And although I looked after the data center business here when I walked in, we didn't have a global or a regional strategy or a software strategy. So that was one of the first things we did after, and this was in the middle of COVID. It took a bit more time, but we identified that, hey, we're not going to grow. This market is booming. We're gonna miss this bus unless we actually implement a segment strategy. So I think it's key.
I mean, typically, like VCs and startups frequently talk about getting to product market fit and getting to go to market fit. But when you're after a brand new segment and you're trying to figure out a new playbook, there's a lot of figuring out the answers to questions.
Yeah. And you would have seen this. I'm sure you would have seen it in your thing where people go, oh, data center's hot right now. Let's go after data center. Yeah. Okay, but data center's huge. It's like the biggest thing in the industry. Who are you going to target? Where do you start? Who do you know? Do you know the hot areas? Do you know the areas now that are building? You know the areas 5 years time, and they're going to be building. What are their business drivers? You know what's holding them back? Is it land? Is it power? Is it people? You know, whatever it may be. So yeah, it's essential. You've got to do your homework, but it's I honestly could not see this team being successful without being a segment strategy. It would have been a mess.
Final area I wanted to ask you about today is your favorite productivity tools. What are your must-have apps and software that you use on a daily basis that if someone from your internal IT or finance were to approach you and say, we're narrowing down the list, what would you fight hard to keep?
Yeah. Okay. So just for transparency, I'm a Luddite. Despite leading the technology scene here, I consider myself a Luddite, Josh. Most people probably wouldn't. If you could see my desk in front of me with my 2 laptops, my iPhones, and all of my stuff over here, you would consider that. But I like simplicity. Okay, so I'm not going to be the first guy to download the latest and greatest app, on my phone or my laptop or anything like that. One thing that's very important to my role is visibility. I need to be able to see data, quickly. When you're looking after 4 different regions like China, India, Asia, Australia, as I mentioned, the way that they go to market, the way they report data, who they engage with, and numbers is all different. Okay, and it has to get rolled up centrally. So simple corporate tools like Power BI. Power BI is probably, I know it's such a general one, but it's a game changer. The fact that you can pre-program some stuff into this tool and actually have the stats come up and the numbers come up in forms of graphs. When I have to do a lot of reporting internally, or I'm sitting in front of a customer doing a quarterly business review, just be able to have this at my fingertips is huge. You've got to have good reporting tools. Okay, you can't just go out there and scrabble across numbers and grab a few Excel spreadsheets from here and rely on a CRM over there. Being able to have a centralized repository in a role where you are the sales director and you've got so many points of visibility, you need something that's centralized. So having something as simple as Power BI, and we have a few Power BI experts in the team, it's a game changer. You need something like that, in there. Having a solid CRM tool, in there as well. If you think about it, we have data center, we have digital, and we have cybersecurity. They're 3 different customer profiles. Being able to keep across, those at any one time is hard. We need to have current data, around the customer, as well. Then in terms of, I'm going to go on a limb here. I'm going to give you 3. The third one I'm going to give you is one that may be unexpected from a sales director, and maybe I'm a little bit behind the times, a lot, as I said, but Canva has been a game changer in terms of like presentations and how we actually bring stuff to customers and how we present it to customers as well. And this tool is like, it's not free, but it's literally free. You're not paying thousands of dollars, for licenses and everything. So if you want to do anything from enhanced presentations or, even how you actually present information out to a customer or something like that. And I'm not just saying Canva just because it originated in Australia and I'm a proud Australian. Maybe I'm a little bit, but it's actually a tool I came across to go, this is so simple and it's so brilliant. So, I'm not one of those guys that's going to give you one of those obscure apps or anything on your phone or anything. I prefer to use mainstream apps, as well. But for me, it's a lot of what I do, Joshua. I need to be able to see data in real time. I need to be able to make sense of that data, as well, and then use it when I'm actually talking in front of customers as well. So anything that helps me translate all of that data and make it meaningful, I will use.
That is fascinating. And I love the idea of Canva. They have democratized marketing over the last 10 years. And more recently, I've even seen them doing series of webinars specifically targeted at sales teams for exactly the kind of use cases you're talking about.
It's so cool. It's so cool. I mean, if they were around 10 or 11 years ago and I was starting my business, I would have just been using everything they had. And the fact that you can actually use them for, I mean, we're a big $25 billion company over here. The fact that we can use them and I can see how cool it is when we use them, their tool's fantastic.
That's terrific. Rich, I really appreciate you sharing your insights, decades of wisdom in and around technology and sales and all different kinds of enterprise stakeholders. It's been super fascinating. If someone wants to learn more about you, follow what you're working on, connect with you, is LinkedIn the best place to start?
LinkedIn is the best place. You can find me. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. I'll be on there daily, at the very least commenting. We've been a little slow posting lately, but that's about to change as well. So definitely LinkedIn is the easiest. They're always happy to chat. And Joshua, thanks so much for the opportunity to come on as well. I know that we met via some mutual contacts as well, and you're building up a great guest list out there. I could see you adding a lot of value, as well to the industry and advice. So, I hope that your audience enjoyed this. They did find it fascinating as well. And but thank you for all the efforts you're putting in there to get the word out.
Oh, you're very welcome. And thank you, Rich, so much for contributing all of your career professional wisdom to the podcast. Really, really appreciate it. I've been speaking with Rich Farrell, who is the Asia Pacific Regional Director of Digitalization and the data center business for Eaton. And Rich is currently based in Singapore. Rich, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Thanks, everyone.
The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com.